Hey everyone, Conor here again for Forge Intelligence, talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I talk to a lot of people about. A lot of people know when I shut up about it, but because it's usually that important. So the topic today is going to be the stress bucket slash all the sort of stress you can handle in your life. So with the stress bucket, we may define the bucket as all the maybe neurotransmitters you can use, your cortisol, your just time in general, just volume of life we can actually progress forward on. I think one thing to understand is you can be good at anything, not at everything, right? So I think we'll probably get to it. So the first thing to consider with this sort of volume bucket is a sort of idea that the sum of all your factors you can deal with is more you can deal with from the whole. So what that sort of means is, I'll relate it back to strength circles. In fact, this is something that the strength side of the industry, the performance side, usually understands a lot better than the physique side, which is that the sum of all your peripheral volumes is greater than that you can recover from in terms of your systemic volume. For example, let's say you could handle 15 sets for 10 individual muscle groups, but on the whole, you can only handle 110, 120 sets. Suddenly 150 sets is a lot longer, a lot greater than 110, 120. So what's going to happen to all those individual things that were meant to progress? Well, it's more than you can handle on the whole. You'll always be limited by what you can do on the whole. Suddenly those things aren't going to progress. In fact, they might even go backwards. So this sort of principle is going to apply a lot across here. So one thing to understand with this is, I mentioned the bucket was all of the resources we talked about. For sort of visualization purposes, we'll identify maybe water as what's going inside the bucket, right? And water today is going to be the stresses, and this is how many stresses you can hold. So let's go into the first thing. The thing actually fills up the bucket first, which is your psychological slash emotional slash spiritual stress. So this fact is quite important. This is sort of something that's going to underline all the stuff you do. Sometimes it's going to be stuff that's, old trauma. Sometimes it's more current life struggles you're going through. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's, honestly, you name it. It doesn't really matter because it still applies to this. These sort of things weigh you down. It sort of affects how much you can recharge anyway. It usually fills up the bucket first. And something to add, any physical stresses you add on top of this, make sure to have like an amplitude effect by any psychological stresses you have. For example, instead of a physical stressor being one of itself, it might be worth 1.1, 1.2 of itself. Which sort of fills up that bucket a lot quicker. So it does have a set effect. Imagine it's almost like the taxi thing, right? So you jump in a taxi, you've already got like a certain amount you're paying just to be in there. That can be the psychological stress already there. And then suddenly you pay per kilometre. But it's more than just like $1 per kilometre. Let's say it's $1.20. It sort of fills up quicker. Right, so that's the first thing that's going to fill up your bucket first. Let's say this is sort of going to be here. It's going to vary for person to person, depending, on life experiences and stuff like that. I can't guess that through the video. But it's definitely worth looking into, understanding how certain things affect you, how you sort of respond to certain triggers and stuff like that. May tell you a lot. And something that's definitely got a lot of implications in the fitness industry, like with things such as, eating disorders or all kinds of things trigger back to all kinds of things from like an early age usually. Right, the next thing is the sum of all your physical stresses. So one thing I mentioned before, you can, for example, progress your business. You can progress your study. Well, let's use my examples. So as you can see here, there's sort of like, okay, that's an individual thing I can handle. That's an individual thing I can handle. Individual. You may notice that's over the top of the bucket. If I was going to continue adding that stress, things would be overflowing. And I'll discuss what happens when things overflow in a second. Right, so that could be your work stress. Let's say you got a business or just regular work. Maybe you hate it, maybe you like it. Either way, it's a stress. Another thing could be your university or just any studying you do. Guys, these things are just examples for me that what actually applies to infinite. Another thing could be like you raising a family, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's your friends, and maybe another thing is your training. Okay. One thing to understand is about training is, I'll put it last. One thing to understand is training is a luxury stress. So basically it's the sort of end of the line. Once the big dogs are taken, like whatever food they want on the table, training comes in last and basically will take what it can do. So let's say you're someone that's extremely busy with work, relationships, stressed out both physically and psychologically. you might only have that much training you can handle from. Suddenly, like a lower volume approach is maybe very beneficial for you. Let's say you got the example of being an athlete, right? Often like their work is their like performance. So suddenly that work factor's gone, or they don't have a relationship, not tied down, they're doing all this stuff, right? And suddenly they can handle so much more volume. And I mean, if you try and copy some of these things these athletes can do, you're probably not gonna have the same success because you don't have all the other variables in life that they may do. Right, so one thing I like to do in this sort of thing to make sure, okay, I can fit things inside the whole bucket, yet make sure things are sort of progressing in different phases or things in my life, is do a bit of like life prioritization / periodization, believe it or not. God can laugh at your plans for this one, but for theoretical sake, you might say, okay, for this month, I'm going to try and really progress my business. I'm going to really try and progress maybe my relationship that might be tied down to removing some of your psychological stress. And I'm going to put my university studies or my certain friends on maintenance / my training on maintenance. And that way I can fit in certain things, not exceed my whole things so much that my work and relationship thing suffer anyway because I'm overdone. So that's sort of something you can do. You can sort of go like a maintenance, progress sort of cycle, depending on, how much stress you can handle on the whole. But understand you can't go balls out, balls to the wall, grind it out, brother, forever on all these factors, which I'll discuss what happens in a second. But next sort of thing I want to talk about is, can we make that bucket bigger? Can we sort of poke holes in the bucket? Yes, in different ways. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is poking holes in the bucket. So imagine there's water coming in, which is all your stresses, right? Imagine like I poke a hole there, and then water leaks out. Suddenly that bucket's not going to fill up as high or as quickly. What can they be? They can be more of your anti-stressors. Maybe they're things you enjoy. Maybe they're like things such as having a positive mindset. Maybe they're things such as like recharges, such as, meditation, food, sleep, all those sort of things. Whatever your recharger is, it might just help get rid of some of those things, allow you to do a bit more. One thing to understand is that's not going to be your answer. Even if you've got plenty, ... everywhere, it's very rare if you've got a massive issue of what's coming in, you're going to sort it out with what's going out. What do I mean by that? Imagine you've got a unit of one sort of level anti-stressors. And that's sort of like funneling out, the water comes in and spurring out everywhere. If you've got like a factor of 2 coming in, over time it's going to accumulate more than you can get rid of. And it's going to go and it's going to go. What I'd sort of give the analogy to is if there's issues in your life or whatever, that may be sort of like someone like banging your head with a hammer. What is the answer? Is to tell someone with the hammer to go away, or is it to stick a band-aid on? Yet they're still banging the hammer on that. So without addressing like the hammer itself, some of these anti-stressors, although handy and can get you a little bit more or maybe like delay issues, it still isn't going to be your overall answer. So next thing is personality type. Life's not created equal, guys. So we've got different personality types, and this does have an implication in terms of this bucket. So let's go off like, I don't know, there's plenty of psychological profiling out there. We'll go like, because we're in fitness community, like Fabito's neurotype system, for example. Your type 1s might actually have a larger bucket. They can usually do a tad more, which means what luxury that is. They can work harder. They're often the people you actually see, keep grinding. They don't really talk about efficiency as much as they talk about work harder. And like the other thing with them is certain factors in the same certain jobs wouldn't affect them as much. Let's say you do calls, you're like at a customer service thing. You're doing calls, you're trying to get blah, blah, blah. And let's say you go project a lot. How much that affects type 1? They're looking at me like, whatever, that's their problem. Type 2, did I do something wrong with my job? Type 3, freak out, what's wrong with me? Am I a big issue? That's going to have different amount of stresses sort of affecting that bucket. So that can tie back to physical to a degree, as well as definitely psychological stuff. Right, so sort of understanding that there's a few factors here in terms of, what can I handle and how's it going to affect me for certain things. So guys, it is worth addressing this. If you want to do more, if you want to train more, if you want to work harder, if you want to do all these things, I understand that's probably not the best thing to do all at once, as well as understanding that, man, if you can get rid of some of that psychological / emotional / spiritual stress, digestive stress even, might even add to that, wow, you can do a bit more. Suddenly, instead of like maintaining 2 facets of your life and progressing another 2, You can put only one on maintenance and progress more, or you can get a little bit more out of those things you are progressing. Definitely important. So what happens if we don't? What happens if you say, F you, Connor, I'm going to work harder, I'm going to be the best at everything? Well, most likely none of your characteristics are actually going to progress. You're going to be doing more in total than you can actually deal with. And what happens once things start overflowing? We'll call this one anxiety, we'll call this one depression, we'll call this one losing your job because your work performance sucks, we'll call this one overtraining symptoms, we'll call this one because of that low testosterone, low sex drive, whatever. Not worth dealing with. Who's done that? Me. I've done that. I've got sold into the work harder thing. I've had way too much on my plate than I can handle, and I've learnt this lesson more than once, more than twice, and God, honestly, more than 5 times probably. A bit of a slow learner there, but I finally sort of understood this principle. Actually, first I sort of understood this one through that systemic fatigue thing we were talking about before. But guys, what a difference it can make. So guys, sort of have certain things in order. Again, maybe like you might be in a time of your life where, I plan to put my relationship on maintenance, but then she's like, hey, divorce. Probably worth switching things around, right? Rather than just trying to work harder or not address it. So guys, if you need to, back off with certain things. And guys, this is no excuse to not push certain things as well. Like if you're down here just chilling, whatever, you can go a bit higher, right? There's no need to worry about this stuff. How can you know? Well, the first thing is just have objective sort of measures and like a maybe objective training measure. If you're doing too much, you're going to go backwards in your performance. There could be like work performance things. There could be sort of cues in your relationship and stuff like that. So try and find those objective ones. And then honestly, guys, you do sort of have a feel like that. One other thing we could sort of write out there might be like a mental breakdown. Not a laughing matter, but more so definitely something that sort of flows off of there. So hope this is handy, guys. And guys, if you're sort of someone trying to customize someone's training, if you're someone that does, 3 sets of 10 across the board for every client, not considering that, you're probably stuffed up. In fact, there's no bigger individualization thing than this. There's no bigger sort of thing that's going to tell you how much volume someone can handle as this. You can chuck out, whatever, muscle specific volume you can handle. You can chuck out, is 4 reps more beneficial than 8 if you're not tackling this stuff here. So I hope that was beneficial. Sort of think of how it applies to you. Try and find your own stresses. Try and find your own anti-stresses. And when you can, sort of sort things out or maybe tackle those psychological issues. Hope this was interesting. I hope I sort of got the point across because this is something I sort of might just randomly mention in other videos, just assuming you know this knowledge. But it's definitely important, definitely something to consider. Hope you enjoyed, guys.